Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar titled Xsuite Cloud Zero Trust Security for Your Infrastructure and the AWS Management Console. Giving our presentation today is Patrick McBride, VP of Marketing here at Xceedium, followed by a demo given by Sean Hank, Manager of the Systems Engineering Group, also at Xceedium. We'll be holding some time towards the end to answer any of your questions, so as we go along, please feel free to type your questions into the question box, and we'll make sure that we get to them. I hope you all enjoy our presentation today, and with that, I'll hand it over to Patrick. Whenever you're ready, Patrick, you're all set to begin.
Thanks a lot, Nicole, and thank you everyone for taking a little bit of time out of your morning or evening or your day. We've got folks kind of from all around the globe on today, and we're happy to have you. We've had the opportunity, the group on today, Nicole and Sean and myself have had an opportunity to do this webinar a couple of different times so we can hit different time zones, and it's just kind of always surprising how many people from different time zones join in each time. So we're delighted to have you. I'm going to spend just a little bit of time giving you a brief background on Xceedium and then jump in and talk a little bit more depth about what our Xsuite product does, and then most specifically about our new Xsuite Cloud product, or relatively new, I should say, Xsuite Cloud product. And then I get to hand it off to Sean, who will take you on a tour. And as we go along, we'll answer some questions as we go. We'll, as Nicole said, save some time at the end as well. So without further ado, let's just jump right in. So Xceedium is a software company that provides what we call privilege identity and access management solutions. And one of the key pieces of information there is the privilege piece, and we'll spend a little bit more time on that. Our customers are decidedly mid to large size organizations, kind of the Fortune 500, Global 2000, Global 5000 size organizations. They hail from all different vertical markets. So from we've got a lot of clients both in the US and globally in government. We have a lot of clients in a lot of other verticals as well, and we'll spend some time on that real quick. We're headquartered in Northern Virginia, and although we are all three in the DC area today, we're all in a couple of different locations, but all around Washington. We have engineering offices in up near New York City, in Ottawa, Canada, and we've got offices in California as well as locations through distributors globally. So worldwide presence, and our customer base is decidedly worldwide. We've got certainly a lot of customers in North America, but almost as many customers and revenue for the company comes outside of the US. So delighted to have some of our international customers on and prospective customers on tonight. So this gives you a little bit of an idea of the kind of customers that we serve. So the U.S. federal government customers are always easy to list. That's public information. So these are some of the organizations that we do business with, the icons there on the right. But we also have lots of large commercial customers as well. And for anybody who's been in the security industry, for all the obvious reasons, we protect those specific names from visibility. But you can get a slice of who we serve. Banking and finance, like a lot of security companies, is a very large vertical industry for us. We have large brokerage firm and stock exchange customers, a very large presence, and growing quite a bit internationally, as a matter of fact, in the telecommunications sector. We've got quite a bit of energy companies, utility companies in the U.S. and abroad. And retail is also a large vertical for us. So a lot of the usual suspects, and I think the one common thread between both the federal and commercial customer base for us, both in the U.S. market, our North American market, as well as globally, the thread that runs through that is organizations that we have tend to be in heavily regulated industries where not only the security issues are important to them, but the compliance issues are important as well. So at Xceedium, we are in business really to protect enterprises from the risks that privileged users, the accounts that they use, the credentials that they use, the risks that those people and the tools that they use pose to your networks. we certainly understand, anybody that's been in security for any number of years certainly understands that there's a lot of different dimensions to that. So data and privacy breach protection, trying to prevent intellectual property theft, or maliciously taking down systems, et cetera. And what we specifically do is we control access and monitor the activities of privileged users. And for us, privileged users fall into a specific camp. That definition, or the term, conjures up lots of different meanings for different people, but for us it's a specific subset. It's the systems, network, and database administrators typically at an organization. Those can be both employees or third parties, especially with the onset of use of contractors and outsourcers and managed service providers, or just hardware software vendors doing maintenance on their products for you. It includes both third parties that need special access, admin access or root access to the devices on your network. So as we said or mentioned before, we tend to work a lot with organizations that are highly regulated, and you can see some of the regulatory compliance mandates here. I would throw into that, from an international flavor, there's a lot of EU privacy regulations that we can support, and ISO standards that we help organizations meet as well. And this really is a real problem. If you take a look at the little square up in the right corner of your screen, this problem is something that has caused real issues at real companies, as you can see at Goldman Sachs or Fannie Mae or Bank of America, et cetera. So how do you deal with this risk as an organization? Well, for many organizations, the starting point is the concept of least privilege, and that is providing only the minimal access required and the minimal authority on a particular system to do the specific job that's required. And that's both programs, if you're talking about programs having only minimal access, or the people using those programs only having the minimalist access to what they need to do their job specifically. And that's certainly a great starting point. I mean, that really helps take care of a piece of the risk here. But we don't think that's enough, given the importance of the kinds of accounts that privileged users have, and the way that a lot of organizations have their networks set up, and certainly in a hybrid cloud environment, which we'll spend a lot more time on today. The idea of just least privilege, just restricting access or restricting the command set isn't quite enough. So our philosophy is around zero trust, and for us that's a set of controls that go above and beyond the least privilege hurdle and provide what we think is the appropriate level of protection for the risk involved with privileged users and the accounts that they use. So when we talk about zero trust, what we thought we would do to put it in a really clean picture for you is just to give you a simple use case. So we provide a lot of controls under the zero trust banner. And what we're going to do is show just a exemplary use case here, where this systems administrator, let's say he's a Unix systems administrator, needs to spend some time on a file system to do some maintenance work, for example. Obviously a very trivial use case, and I'm sure you can all think of much more complex use cases for this, a database administrator, application administrator, doing some large-scale configuration management kinds of things. But in our simple use case, we'll just use the systems or systems administrator, Unix systems administrator here. So the first thing that we think that you need to be taking a look at is the idea of making sure that you're using appropriately strong passwords. And people tend to be the weakest link in the security chain, and if left to their own devices, will often choose less than hard to guess passwords, mostly because they've got so many of them to remember very often. So, around the Washington, D.C. area, you'll see some of the different sports teams, names as common passwords. Around the globe, you'll see the same thing, or favorite movie heroes, et cetera. So, the first thing is you want to be able to enforce kind of password strength conditions, and that's something that we do. But more importantly, you want to be able to vault those passwords, put them into an encrypted store so that, in fact, the end users, our Unix systems administrator, doesn't even have access to the password. They don't have the passwords in a spreadsheet, possibly, or a document. that they might be sending around an email to other administrators who need access to the systems. They simply don't have them. That protects the Unix system from somebody walking up with the password and going to the keyboard and logging in, as well as it protects them being able to SSH or hop over via RDP and do something on the box if they're not authorized to do that. So the next control that we think about is this idea of positively identifying the specific user. So not just knowing that this is a Unix systems administrator who may be going and using the root account on this Unix box. We want to know that it's Tom and that he's logging in at 2 a.m. For example. So what we do there is we can enforce multi-factor authentication systems. We integrate with those, and Sean will cover some of that in the demo, talk you through some of the different systems that we integrate with. But the first step is really to positively identify who this person is. From there, you can provide role-based access control, a whitelist of the resources that this person's able to see. So in our simple scenario here, this person only gets to see one particular device on their access page. He doesn't even know that those other servers to the right and left are actually in the system. If he was authorized to use those, he would then see those systems listed in his whitelist as well. So the next step is really to monitor and record sessions, and those are broken into two. So monitoring is really active monitoring, and watching for commands that the person is trying to do, things that the person is trying to do once they're logged on into the system, and if you so choose through policies, making sure that they can't do certain things. And again, Sean will take you through that with some really good examples when we get to the demo. We also record the session, so the idea of being able to record it for posterity, go look back and see who might have been doing, what this particular administrator was doing at a particular time. If you need to investigate something or you need it for forensics purposes, that recording is kept as well. The next step is really filtering specific commands, so allowing or disallowing commands through a whitelist or blacklist. What can the particular person do once they're logged onto the box? What do you want to let them do, or what do you want to let them or avoid them doing? And we'll also show that in the demo. This next control is really about preventing leapfrogging, and because so many both insider issues and even external attacks use a land and expand kind of model, get to one resource and then leapfrog from that resource to another around the network. We have some capability to eliminate that from happening. So you can only get to the resources that you're authorized to, and you can't jump laterally in the network. And then the next piece is really attributing. We've positively identified somebody on the front end through strong authentication methods. And then even if you've got your network configured so that your Unix devices, for example, are set up with all root accounts rather than having unique accounts for every user, for configuration ease of configuration, we can still attribute specifically who was on that box at what time. So no longer do you have the question of, who at 2 a.m. was root on this particular box running these commands. It might be great that you have a log file on the box, but if you don't know who was doing it, it doesn't help you too much. And then by using something like Xsuite, you can make that a positive connection between the user, the person, not an IP address, not a MAC address that may or may not be theirs, but the actual person in the box they're on. Of course, we log everything, and part of that monitoring is that we alert, we provide alerts. We can write out to syslogs, integrate with SIM tools, et cetera, so that if somebody does attempt something that they're not supposed to be doing, there's lots of actions we can take. One of them is to provide an alert off to the Security Operations Center so that you can appropriately deal with that in a timely manner. So that just gives you some idea of the controls. And again, it goes above and beyond just controlling access, really, which is the kind of pivotal piece of least privilege, and all the way up to what we call zero trust. So now we introduce, instead of just a simple equation where we've got a single server that a particular Unix systems administrator has to get to, and we go to the real world, and we borrowed, shall we say, this slide from the Gartner folks, and this gives some idea of what a lot of our clients are doing. They are virtualizing their infrastructure, and in many cases running many more servers up on a virtual infrastructure. They're investing in private cloud implementations, a virtualized infrastructure, possibly in somebody else's data center, but all quarantined off to your equipment and caged. And then obviously public cloud infrastructure is a big push. So in this case, you've got a couple of things going on. First of all, you've got a management plane, the tools and techniques that you end up needing to use to manage all of these devices that are running in new places now, including out in the public cloud, really greatly expand the management plane that you have to lock down. So being able to provide security controls that work across all of these different environments in a single tool ends up being a particularly important thing, not only from good security perspective, but being able to show the auditors to that. So unifying how you do policies across this heterogeneous environment is both difficult and important. So the other piece of it is being able to continuously monitor all of your resources, regardless of where they are. And I guess the other thing to mention here is when you get out to the public cloud infrastructure, and in some instances, to some extent, in the private cloud, a lot of your traditional perimeter controls just aren't there or are ineffective. Perimeter controls, perimeter defenses were never particularly effective at locking down privilege access anyway. They're great for general access or keeping the bad guys out, but when you let the good guys or people who you think the good guys are into your environment, they can usually go wherever they want to go pretty easily. And certainly if it's actually an employee or somebody who knows your network, they not only know how to get around the network, they know how to evade your controls that are in place or possibly wipe away their tracks if they need to. So that brings us to the cloud. We started going down this path about 18 months ago. Many of our clients, both domestically in the U.S. market and internationally, started to talk to us pretty frankly about the need to support them as they made this jump. And so the one vendor that kind of came up in almost all of those discussions was Amazon. So we turned our focus to the Amazon team, did a lot of research by ourselves up front, and then really got well integrated with that team. And they've done some really interesting work on their platform to enable organizations like us to plug in and leverage some pretty powerful capabilities that they've built and allow organizations like us to extend some of the investments you've made in your traditional security tools that might run in your data center or your traditional identity and access management tools, enable you to extend that into the cloud pretty effectively. So earlier this year, in the July timeframe, we announced the Xceedium new product, Xsuite Cloud, on Amazon Web Services, and I guess we did that in July, and then the next month that became generally available. So that's been generally available for a number of months now. We're very excited about the traction we're gaining in the market with it. Our existing customer base has been very interested in it, so we're quite happy with the progress we made so far, and certainly are looking at getting lots of feedback from the new customers about where to take it in the future. But let me give you just a bit of a snapshot of what you get with Xsuite Cloud for AWS. So you get the same role-based access control. You get the same monitoring and recording of sessions, the same vaulting and management of your credentials, your passwords, and other credentials. And we also extend these same protections to the AWS Management Console, which is noted there. So you not only in the cloud, and actually in the virtual environments as well, you not only have Unix servers, Windows servers, Linux servers, etc., running up in the cloud, you've now got a very powerful new super user account or tool called the AWS Management Console in Amazon scenario. And that tool enables organizations or enables an individual user to go in and add new servers, stop or pause servers, delete them, et cetera. So quite a powerful tool. It's not just being able to wreak havoc on one particular device. You can cause a lot of damage potentially on many devices. And there's a financial consequence to this. So it's not only a tool that allows you to start a new server or stop it, et cetera. when you do that or allocate other Amazon resources, storage resources, as an example, that starts to incur a cost for an organization. So there's a technical security risk as well as a financial risk. And so we've extended the same protections that we have in place for the various different server platforms to the AWS Management Console as well. And that's what we're showing you. Two things to take away from this picture. First of all, we support all the different. Amazon is broken up into multiple regions. So they've got their public cloud infrastructure that is in lots of different geographies. And then within a particular data center, there's different availability zones that we won't go into a lot of detail here, but you'll see some of that when we get to the demo. Sean talks about it. But there's also other specialized regions in the United States. They've got a region called GovCloud that supports the U.S. federal government, and it's manned just by U.S. nationals in that organization, which is a government requirement. There's also something they call the VPC, the virtual private cloud, which is a private cloud, your own dedicated devices up in their data center. So you can run public cloud or you can run in a private cloud in AWS, and they do that. They're rolling that out globally, obviously. And then we've got two different kinds of privileged users. Your standard systems network database administrator, depicted here by the woman at the top, and a master, account management or master AWS Management Console administrator who has, really has the keys to the whole AWS kingdom, or at least the infrastructure that you happen to be in your organization running on that platform. That does not, just to be clear, that doesn't give you access to the part below the hypervisor. So you don't have access to the AWS side of their infrastructure. We actually have delivered this new product in two different form factors. So our current customers or new customers can buy it on the existing hardened appliance that we provide. That's how we've supported customers running traditional data center and private cloud instances. But we also deliver that in what we call an Amazon Machine Image, or an AMI, and that is if you will, a version of the product, a soft console, or a soft version of the product that runs up in EC2. So it's not a physical appliance, but a soft appliance that runs up on the Amazon infrastructure. And what we're trying to show in this picture is it doesn't matter which one you purchase. You could choose to run, and there's good reasons, for and against, but you can run it up in Amazon and manage across public cloud, private cloud, and traditional data center, or you can run it on premise in your data center and still manage across the public cloud, private cloud. So no difference in what you can use to protect, given the different form factors that we have here, just the form factor that matches what you're trying to do with your particular architecture. So kind of summarizing up what the Xsuite Cloud provides, it does the role-based privilege access control on your enterprise systems against the AWS Management Console and against instances, servers running up in the cloud. Something we didn't talk, but you'll get to see in the demo, it also enforces what we call separation of duties on the AWS Management Console. So we spent a little bit of time saying that you can do all kinds of things with the AWS Management Console. You can configure storage resources, you can configure servers, you can stop and start them, you can get audit reports. You can actually, with the key account, buy a refrigerator. It actually has access to the whole Amazon capability as well that's tied to the account. With separation of duties, well, the Amazon team has done quite a good job building up an infrastructure, an API on their side to provide separation of duties in the management console. They call it the Identity and Access Management Infrastructure. And what we do is we allow you to enforce IAM roles from Xsuite Cloud. And we'll show you exactly how that works when we get over to the demo. As you might expect, full audit trail. We do the session recordings across all of the things that we talked about, including the console, management console. We can record those sessions as well. We vault the passwords and the access keys in the Amazon environment. And in a lot of instances, you're now moving from standard password ID password to various PKI keys for access to some of those resources. And we still do the strong authentication and have the ability to attribute use, whether it's a user logging onto the management console or somebody logging on to root on a Unix server or admin on a Windows box running up in the cloud. We'll actually show you how well we've done the integration work between Xsuite Cloud and the Amazon infrastructure. To Amazon's credit, they spent a lot of time designing that, and they continue to make improvements to their infrastructure and the APIs. We talked a little bit about the Amazon infrastructure that allows separation of duties. So we'll show you that, but you'll also see some other pretty interesting things that enable us to do things like auto discover and auto provision resources, and we'll demo that. And the last note here is it's public sector ready. So for government customers in the United States and government customers globally tend to have some very high assurance requirements that they layer in. So our product is U.S. federal government FIPS validated. It supports smart card authentication, which the U.S. government's got a big initiative there. I know a lot of other global governments do, and the financial services industry, I know in Europe, is making a big push to smart cards as part of the authentication mechanism. So we support that as well. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sean, and he'll take you on a tour. I'm going to keep a watch out for some questions, and we've already got a couple here, but I'll let Sean get rolling and kind of feather those in as we move along.
Thanks, Pat. Can you hear me?
I can, perfectly.
And you should be able to see my screen as well. Please tell me if you can see that.
Same thing. Looks good. We're
Right,
good
great.
to go.
Awesome. Again, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining us. Really appreciate you being here. I'm going to run through a couple of features of the interface and capability of the new Xsuite platform, specifically as it relates to some enterprise on-premise use cases as well as some cloud-based use cases. So before we get into that, one of the first things I'd like to mention about the Xsuite platform is when Pat was talking about our zero trust model and our ability to sort of contain users and prevent unauthorized access to resources, one of the ways that we're able to do that is by eliminating the inherent trust or the inherent access that is often granted to a user once they authenticate to a workstation or a server that participates on some network somewhere. The way that we do that is by leveraging an authentication model where all the authentication requests can either be done locally on the appliance or passed to other authentication repositories such as Active Directory, Radius, RSA Secure ID. Some users leverage smart cards and PKI X.509 certificate infrastructure, and we have a mechanism to support all of that. So the idea here would be that a user would first have to log into the Xsuite platform, and once they log in, an access policy is going to be granted to them based upon that ID and the role that's been associated with that user's account within the Xsuite platform. In my particular instance, logging in with this super account gives me the ability to access all of the features of the appliances for purposes of showing you a demonstration. I could also limit that role and maybe just make it available to the super account so that only one user would have access to one device, and that's all that they would see. But as an administrator, we get to see quite a number of things. And so let's kind of walk through the interface a little bit and talk about it. First thing that you'll see is, as an administrator, you get to see the health and status of the appliance or appliances if you have them clustered, and you get to get an understanding of the total number of devices or licenses that are being used versus that are available, as well as anything that's taken place over the last bit of time. So you'll see that I have one login, which is my login for the super account, as well as password changes and credential requests, as well as information relative to recent events that took place. So pretty standard stuff as it relates to just providing some high-level interface, high-level information in the interface for an administrator. All right. So access. Let's talk about access for a moment. Once you have a policy and you've successfully authenticated to the Xsuite, that access policy is going to be defined. Now, how is that generated and where does that come from? Quite simply, go to the Policy tab and you go to Manage Policies, and simply you have a list of existing policies that are there. I can also break this list down and do a couple different things. So if I want to look for all of the devices and access methodologies that the super account would have, you'll be able to see that here as well. It looks like I have a total of about 18 different access policies relative to the super account. Some are dedicated and standalone for the super account user itself, and some apply to a group membership with which the super account is a member of called Xsuite admins. So you can have policies lined up for individual users of Xsuite. You could also create groups of users and associate access policies to those users. Again, it could be an LDAP security group, it could be a local security group, it could be a radius security group, whatever have you. The idea here is, again, giving you the flexibility to be able to create either singular policies or collective policies that apply to either an individual or group of users or devices. Okay, a pretty straightforward process there.
Hey, Sean, I'm going to ask you a couple that are coming in. So one was mostly a request. It's we're showing, it looks like a physical Xceedium appliance, and we had a request to be sure that we call out any functions or feature that's not supported on AWS. And I'll give you the top level answer, and then you can drill into that as we go along. But Xsuite Cloud ends up being a superset of everything that our Xsuite capability does. So Xsuite Cloud runs on a physical appliance, but it can provide all those same functionalities. The Xsuite Cloud platform provides all the same functionalities that Xsuite does for traditional data center. It just adds some stuff when you get up to the cloud environment.
No, absolutely. And I'll make sure that we point out, some of the additional features that are available in a virtualized instance as opposed to a physical hardware appliance. I would say, by and large, though, to add on to your comments, that there really isn't any feature that is unavailable in a virtual instance that is available in a physical instance. The probably only exception to that rule would be, the way that we handle synchronization and active-active high availability for the virtual instances, because again, without physical appliance, it's handled a little bit differently depending upon the hypervisor that's supported. But we'll definitely make sure we call those out. So again, I have a policy here that allows me to see specific devices that I'm connected to or that I'm allowed to access. And we've identified not only the access method, the transport protocol associated with the type of access, but we also have some other kind of really cool features too, like, for example, being able to actually see a credential to a targeted system to be able to leverage on a login. Speaking of that, let's go ahead and log into a system at the moment. So again, we talked about being able to log in directly to the Xsuite platform, talked about being able to generate policies and create them and apply them to individuals and groups of users. One of the additional capabilities that we have is the ability to obfuscate the actual credential that's used to connect to a resource. Obviously, when you talk about outsourcing, or you talk about the ability to provide additional layer of security for your network infrastructure and your critical infrastructure for the privileged users, one of the ways you can provide that is by obfuscating or masking or hiding the credentials in a way where the users can still gain access to the systems that they need to perform their jobs and their duties, but in a way that keeps the information security officers and the auditors sleeping well at night, because again, the end users don't have the credentials and don't know them, right? So what you saw here as I logged into the system was that the Xsuite platform provided the credential to this particular RDP session in this domain controller for me. I don't know what the password is, but I do know that I've been given it access with the administrator account on this particular Windows 2003 server. So now that I'm on this system, one of the other unique features that we have is the ability to record this session. It's an optional feature that we provide to be able to call out, for example, in the title bar, as you can see up here, that all of the actions are being monitored by this system. Okay, again, you can choose to show this functionality, or you can choose to hide this capability, but still affect the recording. Let's go ahead and launch a couple instances here. So the main access policy says that the super account that I've logged in with has the ability to connect to the RDP protocol to the domain controller here. We have some additional policies that prevent unauthorized outbound access while I'm connected to this domain controller. In essence, what we've done is created an island at the network layer to prevent unauthorized outbound access from this domain controller to other resources on the network, whether that be an IP address, an entire subnet, an entire net block, if you will. We have the ability to prevent unauthorized connections. So what you see here is that as I tried to make the telnet connection from the command line interpreter inside of Windows, an error message popped up with a customized message that basically said that even though I have administrator login rights and permissions on this domain controller, my telnet connection outbound, despite my elevated privilege, has been denied. So it doesn't really matter what account you're using when you're working within the Xsuite platform, because the controls that we have in place supersede or override any of the local permissions as it relates to some of this functionality. Okay. If I wanted to launch a PuTTY session and try to make an SSH connection to an outbound server, again, what you're going to see is I get that same customized message. So being able to prevent unauthorized connections so that the user can perform the work that they need to do inside of the environment. They need to do some, maybe they need to add a user or remove a user inside of, or edit a password or reset a password. Not a problem. You can do that and have total ability inside of the operating system on this host to perform the activity that you need to. No problems whatsoever. But the moment that you try to make an outbound connection from this host, in this case, I've hit a violation threshold of 3 violations, and as a result of that, it says that my session is now terminated. Okay, I don't want to reconnect to this system, so it takes me back out to the main login page, or the main access page, if you will. So now that that session is terminated, let me just kind of run through some of the logs that were generated by the system through this process. Again, one of the components about Xsuite that we find benefits a number of administrators, and we get this feedback on a pretty consistent basis. They really like the fact that regardless of the account that's being used to access the system, we track everything based upon the unique named user ID of the person who logged into Xsuite. So in this case, it's Sean who's using the super account that's logged in. I'm part of the Xsuite admins group. I connected to the domain controller that's part of the device group known as the Windows Server. Here's my source and added IP address and the server I tried to connect to. And then we just step through the process here of being able to show, for example, that, again, connecting to the server on 3389, that when I tried to connect to another resource, we blocked that connection. That happened 2 additional times here and here over various ports and protocols, and then, of course, the session was terminated. Now, logs in and of themselves are great. In fact, we actually have a number of additional columns that you can add to the specific view that you have in the system, so that if you wanted to, for example, show some type of transaction ID, you wanted to know what kind of applet was being used, if you wanted to add maybe on the other side of the device, you wanted to provide, maybe like the device group, right? You'd be able to do that here and just sort of customize the way you want this to be. Now, you could also then turn around and save this as a report, and choose to have it automatically emailed to you on a periodic basis, once a day, twice a day, once a week, once a month, and have some data in there with it. Oh, that's great and wonderful. The other neat thing that we do as part of this is we're able to actually take you from the log messages that are generated, in this case for this violation that took place over the telnet port. I can actually click on the view recording option right here inside of the syslog page, and that takes me right here to the moment in time where the violation took place inside of the session that we were in. Now, a couple things to note here. One, we've got the warning message that appears in the timeline at the bottom of the session recording window here. Another thing that you'll note is, again, everywhere there is a violation inside of the timeline, we actually put the little red pointed triangle there to give you a visual of where in the session the violations took place. Second thing to note, the timeline itself. We actually document the time of day, depending upon the time zone that you're in and how you've configured the time zone settings within Xsuite. We actually will go ahead and show you the hour, minute, and second in the timelines, as well as give you the elapsed time that the session was there. So I'm going to let this play through here so you can actually see, if you look at the screen, what will end up happening is you're going to see the sessions actually run through. I'll back this up just a little bit so you can actually see the actual typing that's going on inside of that session, right? So 192.168.44. I want to say it was 49, right? Yeah, 49.23. So you actually get to see that take place. Having this for forensics purposes, or having this to get the visual context that general syslog messages don't provide you, is something that a lot of customers, as well as a lot of auditors, as well as a lot of accounts payable individuals seem to like a lot for some reason. So I'll just let this play through, and I'm just going to show a couple other instances while that happens. Number one, again, we track everything based upon the unique user ID of the person that logged into Xsuite. Again, me with this super account. We're also letting you know how long the session took place. And if you notice that for this 3-minute, 30 frames per second video recorded at 1024 by 768, we're only utilizing just 219 kilobytes of hard drive space. Okay. Also notice, if you will, that we actually sign all of our session recording files with a SHA-1 verification hash, so that if someone were to go into the actual content of this particular file, assuming they had file system access to be able to perform read or write operations to that particular file, you'd actually get a message here that said that this particular session or this particular recording had been modified and would not be valid as it is here. So again, understand that the normal storage tax that you might have with playing back 30 frames per second video, similar to the quality that you might find on a 720p resolution inside of YouTube, instead of it being 200 megabytes, we're actually talking about 200 kilobytes, and that's pretty consistent across the board for all of our recording files. All right, kind of jumped through that, talked about the logs here. So what I'm going to do is go back, and I'm actually going to run a different type of session. I showed you the RDP sessions, and now what I'm going to do is actually show you a privileged session using to an Oracle server running on Linux with the root account. So just let me go ahead and click on the root login here.
And Sean, why that's popping up, I had a question that came in a minute ago that I wanted to wait for a pause. And so you had mentioned that we provide the credential that the users don't see. So the question was, how do you store credentials and where?
A good question. Credentials are stored within the Xsuite platform if you're using local authentication or if you're using certificate-based auth. Xsuite is a FIPS 140-2 level 2 platform in and of itself. If you're using a virtual instance of the Xceedium platform, it'll be a FIPS 140-2 level 1. We also have the ability to interface with HSMs and other sort of security products that will hold the keys external to Xsuite, so that we can get to be a FIPS 140-2 level 3 certification. Xsuite as a platform by itself is also Common Criteria EAL4 Plus certified. So what that essentially means to everybody that's listening in on the webinar is that any credential stored within Xsuite is going to be using FIPS level, which is the NIST standard here in the United States, or Common Criteria approved encryption algorithms for storing the credentials. Now, if you're using an Active Directory instance, if you're using RSA tokens, if you're using Radius or some other type of third-party authentication mechanism, you may even be using a Radius to connect to an SMS-based two-factor authentication solution. In those types of instances where we're not storing the credential on the box, they're going to obviously be stored inside of Active Directory or the Windows 2003, 2008 server with Active Directory services enabled. They're not going to be part of Xsuite. In those instances, we actually just pass the credential mechanism or the credential itself, username, password, key, token, code. We pass that to the authentication servers for approval and for validation, and then we just hold on to the authenticated code that comes back or token that comes back for the session that the user's in. So hopefully that answers that question. What you're looking at here is an actual terminal session that I did. So in the background here, you remember I clicked on the Oracle server link that said SSH root. Now I'm actually logged in with the root credential here. If I do a who am I know that I'm logged in with the root account. I can see that because of the hash mark here next to the prompt, the host name prompt. It actually says that I'm root on this Red Hat Enterprise Linux 4 instance. But it also says here, as I did the who am I, that I'm root as well. I can actually just sort of navigate the structure, perform some simple commands here just to let you know that this is a live working system. Let me execute top here so you can kind of see that there are processes that are running. Everything's kind of in operation and everything looks great. If I even just do a ps-ef, you'll see that again, here's all the Oracle servers and things. So it's an actual live running system. So I can perform any level of activity that I would normally do with this root credential. There are instances when you need root access, or you need to sudo to root, or whatever it might be, or su to root, and you want to be able to control what's being done in that environment. Maybe you don't want, for example, the system to be rebooted, right, even though you have the root permission. So Xsuite has the ability to prevent any kind of unauthorized command from being executed through what we refer to as our blacklist command filter capability. We also have the ability to support a whitelist, so that if you would like to make the default standard that no command can be executed inside of the environment regardless of the privilege level of the account, you can do that, and then only allow certain commands in the whitelist. A blacklist obviously is going to be the opposite of that, where most of the commands are allowed, and those that are expressly listed in the blacklist, those ones will be expressly denied. Because I am on an Oracle database, if I wanted to, for example, execute the command to drop a database, right, what you'll see here is that even with the root permission on this particular server, the overriding policy that Xsuite provides on top of any of the local policies that are on the host tell the server that, guess what, even though you do have the root credential, we're going to prevent the drop command from being executed. Similarly, how we have containment inside of an RDP session, we can do similar containment not only at the network layer, but also at the command layer, so that if I wanted to maybe attempt an SSH session to another host, what you just saw happen was the session got terminated again based upon the policies that are defined for violation thresholds. Once again, I'll just jump back to the logs, and what you'll see here is that these are the domain controller violations and the session information that was there. We even logged the fact that, guess what, Sean, as a super user of the system, looked at the log records, and he actually viewed one of the session recording files. So not only are we logging the activity to target servers, we're logging the activity of the administrator or the user on Xsuite itself. And in that way, we're sort of eating our own dog food, if you will, as far as being able to make sure that all of the activity taking place in and through Xsuite is logged and monitored. You'll see here that when I made the connection to the resource, I tried to execute the reboot command. Then I tried to execute the drop database command, as well as the unauthorized word type SSH. In this instance, again, I can come in here and I can click on View Recording. Again, this will take me right to the session recording screen. It looks a little different for our text-based sessions or our command line-based sections, as well as mainframe sessions here. Notice the red flashing, or excuse me, the green flashing verifying that just took place. Return code of 0 means that the file system is intact and there hasn't been any modifications made to it since it was originally created by Xsuite's system. Again, I'm just kind of playing back everything that took place in the session here just to give you the visual of exactly what happened. There's a top command I ran to just kind of show some of the running processes of the system and their CPU utilization. We kind of just continue to go through that process, and it'll just continue to run through here. I can actually speed this up a little bit. There's that ps-ef command that I ran. Again, just being able to run through the systems and to be able to look for them. If you want to, you can even do things, for example, like just search for strings inside of the system itself or inside of the log file. So here you can see we've highlighted all the string matches that go with the term violate, or violat, I guess you would say, since there is no trailing E. The point of all this is, again, you have the ability to get the keystroke by keystroke capture in addition to the session recording, in addition to the syslog files, to be able to piece together everything that took place in the environment. If you ever wanted to know what a particular vendor did when they were inside of your environment and connected to one of your servers or routers, you'd be able to actually play back the session and know every single keystroke and every single command that they executed. So again, we have customers that use this as a training aid. We have customers that use this to help validate and verify the fact that when a accounts receivable or accounts payable invoice comes into the company and they've been charged for 60 hours worth of labor because of time they were connected into the systems, you can actually, or they've actually gone through and said, hey, give me all of the logs relative to this particular user ID and when they were logged in, so that I can, again, validate and reconcile with the bills that they've received. So in addition to just looking at it from the log page, you can actually go right to the session recordings page. And again, you'll see a visual indicator here that indicates which particular sessions had violations in them. Now, if you look at them, you can guess just based upon the color scheme that we've chosen that anything that's in red is going to be indicative of some type of violation taking place. Okay. So again, the concept here is if you don't want to actually maybe look at it from a syslog perspective, you just want to get right to the page and see it, and maybe you want to search for a particular user account. All of these are probably going to be super. Let me just see if I can do a search for Sean. And here you'll see I can find all of the session recordings relative to a particular user named Sean, and then be able to turn around and look at those as well. All right. Again, a little legend to just give you an indicator that, guess what, anytime you see the red font, that these particular recording files contain policy violations. All right. Pretty straightforward process there. Okay, so just to recap a little bit, I don't know, Pat, if there are other questions at this point, but before I jump into some of the other aspects of Xsuite, I just wanted to kind of review. We've talked about RDP sessions and our ability to record, audit, log, and monitor them. We've talked about the ability to record, audit, and log our SSH sessions. We've talked about command filtering and socket filtering. We've talked about the ability to integrate with a number of different authentication sources that are out there, all from the enterprise context, again, meaning resources that are inside of your perimeter. So are there any other questions that you have at the moment, or can I continue?
We're good for now.
Okay, good. Just wanted to double check. Thanks. So what I'm going to do now is, again, the context that I've been kind of talking about is everything been based inside of your particular enterprise, behind your brick and mortar. One of the things I'm going to do at this point is switch over to a different view. Now, Xceedium as a company with the Xsuite as a platform has a design goal of making things as easy as possible to transition and migrate to cloud-based infrastructure. Whether you're using Amazon Web Services, whether you're managing your own internal data center and leveraging any one of a number of hypervisor solutions from Microsoft, like hypervisor, whether you're using VMware, whether you're using Zen, whether you're using Oracle VirtualBox, whatever it may be, to make it easy for customers to be able to transition. The neat thing about Xsuite is that regardless of the hypervisor or virtual platform or infrastructure as a service or platform as a service provider you go with, Xsuite has an ability to integrate and provide protections and controls just like we do inside of the enterprise. Xceedium, as a 10-year-old company, has a great track record of being able to provide this kind of capabilities to enterprise class networks. We scale very well in that space. And so it's a logical and natural progression for us to be able to provide those same type of controls to cloud-based environments where, let's face it, based upon all of the recent findings and audits and things like that that we've heard, end up causing security information administrators a lot of headaches at night. So all these resources are Amazon Web Services resources that exist inside of the AWS cloud. They are not physical devices. They are completely virtual in that sense. You can see the actual, what they call the Amazon Machine Image Instance ID, which is the name that's shown right here with a number. In this particular case, this exists inside of the EC2 Classic infrastructure within AWS. And I'm just going to launch an RDP session to that particular resource. Okay. Again, same kind of process. Look and feel is exactly the same. There really is no difference. Notice in this particular session to this domain controller that, again, I wasn't prompted for a login. Right? The login was actually provided through the password management functionality that we have within Xsuite. You can see I'm logged into this 2008 server with the administrator credential or user account. And again, I can go here and perform the normal tasks that I do. Everything is going to operate in the same functionality as it did previously. Really no difference there. So it doesn't really matter where the resource exists anymore. The only thing that matters is you have the control in place to operate inside of that environment. Okay? All right. So,
hey, Sean, you're fading in and out a little bit right now, so I'm not sure if we've got something heavy. I don't think it's this, but something else heavy on the network. Just a quick heads up on that.
Yeah, thank you. I did have to take a water moment, so could have been that. All right, so what I'm going to do here is, so this is again an RDP session. I can multiple sessions open. I'm just going to leave that open in the background here while I get some of the other capabilities. So maybe I want to connect to a SQL Server Management Studio instance inside of a 2008 server that's running in the cloud. One of the other capabilities that we have the ability to do is to actually launch specific published applications inside of the RDP protocol stream. So in this instance, what you're seeing here is the Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio is being opened, but I don't have access to any of the standard desktop icons or start menu that you would normally see. So as a use case, maybe you're a vendor or maybe you're doing some work inside of a critical element of the network, and they only want you to have access to the application that you need to perform your job, as opposed to having access to the entire operating system. We've essentially created, and again, a little bit of an application island to prevent unauthorized access to other resources inside of that particular session. Again, everything's being recorded in this environment. If I come back over here, I could actually click on the public cloud RDP link. And again, in this particular session, it's the same server in a different terminal session that I've got going on. And again, in this instance, you can see now that I can actually get to the full start menu. I have some icons down here in the status bar. And if I want to here, I can just go ahead and launch into Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio as well and connect. Right? So the difference between the two, this is a full desktop environment, no problem whatsoever. If you're an internal administrator or you want to give somebody else additional capability above and beyond, you can absolutely do that. If you want to tie down the environment because maybe someone's working remotely and they just don't need access to, the file system, they just need access to perform the work inside of the database, you can do that as well. All right. So I'm going to close these sessions. Very similarly, again, I can connect via SSH to Red Hat instances or any of the other Linux operating systems that are out there. In this particular instance, maybe I want to try to escalate or go to, I think this particular one is this. Let's see if that works. Yeah. So here, I'm trying to escalate and get into the root environment or root privilege, and I'm not able to do so. Right. Again, if I tried to reboot this remote instance over inside of the AWS infrastructure, I can't do that. I can't even restart the network interface. Right. It's just not possible for me to do that.
All
so
right,
again,
Sean,
all this. Go ahead.
I'll give you a quick pause question there. We've got so the two that just cropped up. One is, does Xceedium, does our Xsuite support multiple AWS accounts? Was one of the questions. Let me give you the second one too. And the other one's, are multiple regions supported on a single device?
So there are multi-level answers to all of those questions, or both of those questions, I should say. When you talk about being able to support multiple AWS accounts, for those that are on the webinar tonight and maybe don't understand what that question is asking, AWS bases everything that they do from a account and a billing and an access perspective based upon what's known as an account ID or an access ID. As I go here and I navigate to the backend third party, what you're seeing, if I go back to that screen here, here is the access key ID that I have to use that allows me to integrate and get updates and connect to devices inside of the AWS infrastructure. Currently in the current iteration here, we're only using what's known as a single access ID with the combined secret key to give me access to the environment. I don't have a mechanism to support, let's say, 2 or 3 different access IDs for purposes of providing the initial integration with AWS. Okay. The second layer to that answer is that inside of the AWS infrastructure, there are actual roles that you can create using the underlying IAM infrastructure that AWS has put together. The IAM capability is there to provide a way to secure subcomponents inside of all of the AWS services. So in this case, you could actually have secondary or tertiary IAM accounts where maybe you want to have a user here like a read-only user, and you want them to be able to have some type of policy or profile when you're using them in conjunction with Xsuite. So from this perspective, the answer is absolutely we can have multiple different accounts or multiple different roles and multiple different profiles to support the capability to do that. You can actually see here we have this component under the Manage Policy section where we can actually integrate and provide an administrator level profile. I can provide a read-only profile, or I can provide the equivalent of a power user profile in the Active Directory terminology to give some capability to a user that is accessing the AWS infrastructure with an IAM account. So again, depending upon what they mean when they were asking accounts, the answer is it depends, but I've given you two pretty solid examples there. The second question that came up or that was asked was something to do with regions, right, Pat? It was
multiple regions on a single device.
Right. So again, Xsuite comes in many different form factors. We've got the physical appliances. We've got the soon-to-be-released OpenStack virtual format that allows us to support VMware, Microsoft's Hyper-V, as well as like Xen or others. And we've also got the AWS specific virtualized format known as an Amazon machine image. So within the Amazon infrastructure, you have the ability to support regions, and inside of each region you have an availability zone. So if you're leveraging the Xsuite AMI, the Amazon virtualized container that stores our software and runs our product, there isn't an ability inside of AWS to support intra-region, meaning what region, let's say East Coast region, United States to the Singapore region. There isn't a mechanism in the AWS backend infrastructure to support that. So if they wanted the ability to, let's say, bridge the gap between the Singapore region and the UK region in Ireland and the East Coast of the United States, they'd actually have to have 3 separate AMI instances of the Xsuite platform to support that in each of the regions. Now, if they wanted the ability to support each of the regions in a single platform, they could use a physical appliance and then connect through the normal networking means, VPN endpoints from their perimeter-based infrastructure, leveraging any one of the number of interfaces we have in our physical box to be able to connect into those various regions, no problem whatsoever. So with the physical appliance, you have a little bit more flexibility. With the Amazon machine image, we're sort of at the beck and call and behest of the capabilities and the infrastructure as Amazon has built out. So hopefully that answers that question as well.
Yep.
All right, great. So what I was doing here is actually just, again, showing some of the session recording files from the previous sessions that I performed. Again, notice, if you will, that nothing is really different from a usability perspective. Everything's, in fact, the same. If I didn't label these devices as saying EC2, which is, again, standing for Elastic Computing Cloud, which is what AWS calls their Elastic Computing Environment, you wouldn't know that these devices were cloud-based resources. Right? If I wanted to view this recording here for the domain controller, I click on View Recording. The interface comes up. I actually believe it's up already in the background, or will be. There it goes. Right? Everything is the same. There is no difference. So again, the purpose of Xsuite in the context of the cloud is to bring that same semblance of control, audit, containment, session recording, authentication, and privileged access and password management, not only to the enterprise resources, but also the cloud-based resources, and do so in a way that keeps the auditors off of the information security systems personnel, and make sure that everyone's happy in that regard, both from a security perspective as well as from a compliance and audit perspective, right? Again, so no real difference there, all right? Everything's the same. One of the unique capabilities that Xsuite has that makes this a very special kind of a integration that we've done is we've integrated with AWS on multiple layers. Number one, if I go in here, we obviously have always supported the ability to store session recording files, in a NFS or SIFS recording. One of the other capabilities that was added was the ability to support Amazon S3. So instead of using your perimeter-based storage infrastructure, you could actually create a rule that says allow Xsuite to store all the session recording files in an Amazon S3 bucket. S3 stands for Simple Storage Service, if you're not familiar with S3. So again, having the ability to integrate and provide, elastic storage for all of these session recording files, and then inside of AWS, you can build rules about, replication and redundancy and such, so that you never lose your session recording files. One of the other ways that we've integrated with AWS is to leverage what is known as the Amazon Web Console. Now, the reason why this is important, I'm going to launch this and then I'll just talk about what the Amazon Web Console is. Amazon, when they first rolled out the entire concept of Amazon Web Services, leveraged a command line based API infrastructure. Anybody that wanted to do anything inside of AWS would do so from a command line basis. Over time, they built out a couple things. They built out the web interface, which you see in front of you, which again communicates via the APIs that they originally created. And then they created software development toolkits in specific languages like Java, PHP, Perl, to allow end users to kind of create their own applications and create their own customizations, but still leveraging those APIs. And then, of course, there's still the traditional straight command line interface that's used to gain access to AWS. So we've integrated the ability to actually record what's taking place inside of the Amazon Web Services console. And why is this important? In a traditional data center or in a virtualized data center, when you want to fire up 500 servers, you typically have to go through a configuration management or change process. You have to request operating capital to procure the servers if it's hardware. You're probably going to have to procure storage and hardware even for virtualized instances. It's just not as easy to have the person that has the technical requirement for those 500 servers. Maybe it's a holiday season and they need to add more web services for processing the online shopping load. They don't have a mechanism that's as easy as just saying I'm going to go out and do that and pay for it, right? The people that handle the budget and finance aspect of it are different from the people that handle the technical aspect of and the engineering aspects and maintenance of that infrastructure. But with the Amazon Web Services console, it's quite conceivable that the technical person has the ability to come in here, launch an EC2 instance, and then turn around and fire off 500 servers, right? And the technical person that does that still isn't the person that's responsible for paying the bill, and now you end up with the situation where the finance department is wondering why all of a sudden they're receiving these bills from Amazon Web Services because a technical individual decided they were just going to turn up and do that. So again, having the ability to record what's taking place inside the web console gives accountability to the information security officer, gives the accountability to the accounts payable and the finance team, and allows the organization to be able to know who actually turned on and fired up what instance at what time. All right.
That prompted a pretty insightful question, actually. So the fact that I think you probably got them with you can fire up 500. So the question is this, Sean: how are dynamic resources, that are automatically done or fired up, protected?
Great question. So if you remember back earlier when I was inside of the policy management page of the Xceedium interface, we had these roles that called AWS policies, right? So if you remember these roles, read-only, power user access, administrator access, these can all be created, and actually there are some that are out of the box here. If I actually jump back over here and go to the IAM interface, what you'll see is that you can actually create additional roles. So I'll just go in here and look at the roles, right? So here you'll see the read-only role. Let me just move this up a little bit to kind of make it easy for you to see. Right, here is the actual policy. Right, this is the policy of a read-only account. Every single service inside of AWS, you have the ability to create rules around what a user or what a profile can and cannot do. In this particular case, the read-only user has a role called read-only access, and you'll see that they can get the description, they can get a template, they can get the list, but they can't actually turn on, turn off, or do any of those type of actions, right? If I look at, let's say, the admin role, and I look at these policies, now we'll go in and look at the sort of administrative role, you can see basically allow every single action across every single resource and every single service that they have. So again, being able to come in here and leverage these AWS IAM roles, but combine them with the, let's say, Active Directory user account that's inside of your perimeter, will give you the power and flexibility to ensure that your, let's say, junior level technician that's responsible for making sure that all of the database logs are being stored or that backups of the databases are taking place, you can make sure they can do that job without any ability for them to actually turn on an instance. And speaking of turning on an instance, that's what I was just going to walk through and do. The other question that you asked was around the dynamism of the Xsuite platform and how we can work with instances that are actually launched. So you'll see here, I'm just going to go back here to my devices page, that I've got, in this particular view, I've got 12, but if I go to the unfiltered view here, you'll see I have about 33 devices in the system. Okay, I'm going to show all 33. I've got a number of devices here called Web Demo. I've got Web Demo 1, and there's a XXX, 3 different machines that are fired up. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to launch an additional 3 instances here. So I'll just make this a total of 6 of these types of devices. I'm not going to worry about anything here. I'm just going to go ahead and say continue. I'm going to go ahead and say continue here. For those that are familiar with what I'm doing, you'll get it. I'm actually going to say that I'm going to call this one Web Demo. Let's get this in here. And I'll just put 2 X's here to show the difference. But one of the capabilities we have inside of this Xsuite platform is the ability to leverage existing policies and workflows and groups inside of Xsuite. And we do that through the use of tagging. In this particular instance, I have a tag known as Xsuite Groups, and that group tag is actually going to allow me to automatically assign these particular instances that I'm firing up to an existing access policy, with an existing session recording policy, with an existing command filtering policy, all inside of a few mouse clicks. So in this case, I, as an administrator with an administrator privilege, am going to launch these additional instances, and there they go. Now, as soon as they're launched, I can come back here, and again, you'll see the total count is 33. I'm just going to do a quick refresh of these devices. And when I do the refresh, you can see now my total count went to 36. So I've automatically imported these 3 additional devices that I fired up. But it gets even better than that. I have a view here from an access perspective showing just the web demo devices. We've automatically provisioned these devices to match the existing work group that I've created with the existing access policies and SSH mechanisms. So if I want to, I can simply just click on SSH here. It's going to launch a session, and now I can go in and do the work that I need to do. So in a matter of about 15, 30 seconds, maybe a minute, I've added additional instances. I've automatically discovered those instances. I've automatically associated them with an existing policy in the system, or I could have assigned them a new one. And I'm in here and I'm performing access and management and doing the work that I need to do. Again, all of it's being recorded, all of it's being logged. It's a pretty amazing capability that we've incorporated here. Now, one last thing I'd like to talk about with a third level of integration that we've done. Notice, if you will, that when I'm looking at these instances, I've got a username up here. It's called super@613-633. You know, it's a token number that we're using that's automatically generated by the system. I'm actually logged into Xsuite. If you remember, I'm logged into Xsuite with the super account. However, what I'm doing here in this environment is actually using a temporary or ephemeral credential to access this particular AWS console. For those that are not familiar with the IAM kind of capability within Amazon, there are essentially 3 different types of accounts. There is a master account that's used for, consider it like a super user or root account inside of AWS's environment. That's the account that's responsible for billing. That's the account that's responsible for developing the overall policy. You have a second type of user known as an IAM user. These are user accounts that you can use to associate with administrative access or read-only access or audit-level access. And you can actually delegate access and create a manager of managers or a delegated administrator that's responsible for a subset of the devices that exist. The third type of account that we have is known as an ephemeral account, or what I call a ghost account. In Amazon terms, they call that a federated account. A federated account doesn't really exist in the context of the IAM services that are here in the IAM console, right? So what this means is that this particular account is an ephemeral credential or an ephemeral account that is temporary, and it's assigned or used with any one of a number of roles that are already pre-existing in the system. Okay, in my case, this ephemeral credential gives me the ability to have administrative rights inside of the environment, but I could just as easily create one that gives me read-only rights or gives me access to turn on certain instances and turn off certain instances, or access the S3 buckets without being able to do anything else. So this third level of integration that we've done takes advantage of what is known as the secure token service inside of AWS, and it's what allows us to create this ephemeral credential. And the benefit to end users and administrators is that they can maintain their Active Directory store in their perimeter, use Xsuite for that authentication and access, and they no longer have to worry about maintaining a separate store in the cloud of users. Right? It's all going to be associated and tied back to their existing user stores, simplifies the management, streamlines the user administration, and makes things a lot easier for everyone involved. But you still get all of the audit, logging, and recording of everything that takes place in the session. Okay, so I've kind of talked about that. I'm just going to quit this session here, and I'm just going to jump right into the logs. You'll see everything that we did, right? You'll see a bunch of refreshes that have taken place for a lot of the accounts we have in our LDAP, and you can see that my session to this particular resource of 9 minutes and 51 seconds is over. I'm going to jump also to the session recordings now because I actually just showed it here, right? So I'm actually just going to click on this device, and here is everything that I just performed inside of that session. So here is almost a 10-minute session recording of a web-based session that it took place, and I'm only using about 1.89 megabytes worth of storage. Okay. Again, everything in the timeline is being logged. You get the exact time. If there are any events that took place, we'd actually be capturing those. All I did was really a series of point and clicks. So being able to just navigate through the structure of the environment, you can see here just navigating through, showing how I started up a device, being able to launch them in the environment, being able to run through all of this. And again, all of this is tracked back to my user ID of the Xsuite platform. Regardless of any of the accounts that I use to access the AWS console, everything's tracked back to my user ID. I'm not sure, Pat, if there are any other questions at this time. I know we're kind of running a little bit long based upon the time here, 5, 6, 7 minutes over the top of the hour. I just wanted to, kind of make sure that I covered those bases because it really kind of fleshes out some of the unique differentiators about not only Xceedium as a company, but also about Xsuite, our product, and how we're able to have this pretty tight integration with AWS at multiple different layers, at the access layer, at the management layer, at the API layer, and how we're able to bring to market this ability for organizations to migrate, who are interested in migrating to the cloud, and give them the same abilities to, again, manage and control and provide the access audit and containment that they're used to.
So I got one easy one that I can take. They saved that for me till the end, since you did such a good job nailing down some of these multi-level questions and answers that we had. So the one question is, do we have a trial version? And yeah, we can absolutely work that out, a trial or a proof of concept scenario. So the easiest way to start that, if you want to just, I won't call out the individual, but if you want to chat us here, we'd be happy to reach back and give you a call. Or if you'd like, or if you prefer, you can go to our website, hit the Contact Us page on www.xceedium.com. And fill out the form, or just lob in a phone call. Either way, we'll get that process started, and we'd love to talk to you in further detail about your use case and what you're thinking about, and try to make you successful as well. So I think with that, Sean, and unless you have anything else, we'll go ahead and call it an evening.
Yeah, no, again, thank you everybody for taking part in this webinar. I know it's kind of hard when it's one-sided. You may have a lot of questions that you'd like to ask. Feel free to reach out to us. More than happy to provide any additional answers and questions. And if you'd like a customized demo, or if you'd like to be able to see some of the functionality relative to your environment, again, just reach out to us, as Pat said. Info@xceedium.com, sales@xceedium.com, and we'll be more than happy to get back to you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great evening, and we look forward to talking to you further. Bye now.
Bye-bye.